Club Beto is on. Your only connection to the very important top officer and unlimited sales success. Your host, Anthony Parinello, is a best-selling author. He's trained over 2 million sales professionals and 65 of the Fortune 100. This program will take you to sales heaven and keep you out of sales hell. So turn it up. Now, here's your host, Tony Parinello.
Hey, Club Beto members, got a question for you right out of the gate. What does Olive Garden Italian Restaurants, Dow Jones, Whirlpool, Siemens, Walt Disney World, AT&T, Lockheed Martin, hold on, still not done, Coca-Cola Bottling Company happens to be the most recognized brand in the world, and the Department of Defense, and Western Digital, Marriott Corporation, Tupperware, and Northrop Grumman have in common? Well, guess what? They all have hired our very special guest today, Mr. Rick Bommelje, to teach their employees how to listen better. Rick has over 30 years of professional experience in the field of leadership, listening, and adult education. Hold on, I'm not done. The Princeton Review named Rick Bommelje one of the best 300 professors, college professors in the nation. He is also the past president of the International Listening Association, and he was inducted into the Listening Hall of Fame, which I never knew they even had one. Imagine that. So today, Club Beto members, you are going to learn from not only this accomplished individual as far as he's one of the top 300 college professors in the nation. He also happens to be a best-selling author. Title of the book, Listening Pays. So with that, I'm going to welcome Rick Bommelje to the show. Rick, nice to talk to you again.
Oh, thank you, Tony, and thank you for inviting me back.
You bet. Now, today we have Club Beto members, just so you know who our audience is here, and it's expanding like the Blob. Remember that movie way back when? We have members now in 11 countries. And they span not only the globe, but they span a number of different products, services, and solutions. Some of them are entrepreneurs running their own companies. A lot of the members are salespeople working for large corporations. Many of the salespeople work in network marketing and direct sales, selling everything from potato chips to computer chips. And, services of intangible, hard to describe benefits all the way up to stuff. If you dropped it and hit it on your foot, you go, oh, I see, that's a computer or whatever. So we got a wide range in our audience, but the common denominator, I believe, is listening. And I know, Rick, with your book, Listening Pays, it's an interesting title. I think it so applies to salespeople. So maybe let's start out. Tell us collectively why you wrote the book and why you titled it Listening Pays.
Oh, thank you for that question.
You bet.
Listening, of course, is the one activity that we do more in our life than any other activity except to breathe. Now, I got into the field a number of years ago, more than 25 years ago now, through mistakes, my mistakes.
I want to hear. Let me just hear one of them. What was that? Did you have one tipping point that said to you, "Oh my God, I really got to figure this out"?
Absolutely. I'll give you two quick ones.
Yeah.
The first one was I almost got fired.
Oh boy.
From my job.
That's big.
And it was very apparent that I just was not listening to the real messages. At the time, I thought I had everything under control, and my overconfidence and, quite frankly, arrogance almost, and I had a forgiving boss, but that was a wake-up call. But sure. The more important one, Tony, was my wife almost left me.
Wow.
And that was a real wake-up call. And fortunately, I was able to find some help
Yeah.
And have been on this journey ever since. And
I bet finding that help was a lot cheaper and easier than going through a divorce.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Wow.
And so the listening pays slogan, if you will, has come out of really a pursuit to connect listening with leadership, and leadership very broadly can take many different size, shapes, and forms. And the bottom line is that better listening equals better living, whether it be on the job or off the job.
I love that. Better listening equates to better living. You know, it seems to me now, I was so impressed when I first met you and I first found you, and knowing that, you know, there's a listening hall of fame, there's an association of listening, you teach listening. I mean, it's not very common, is it? I mean, I don't see a whole lot of listening being taught in high school, grammar school, middle school, colleges. What is that about? Why is it so ignored?
Well, it's another great question, and I think that it's implied, I think, too frequently that we know how to listen. Some of the studies that have come out of the International Listening Association have confirmed that maybe top end, the average in the United States, maybe 5% of the adults have any kind of formal listening education.
Wow.
And so it's not being taught that much in schools. It typically is embedded in liberal arts, and administrators will say, oh, yeah, we teach listening, but I don't really think a lot of serious instruction is done in it.
Yeah, what a shame. And you know, I here's why I love the title of your book so much, Listening Pays. It seems to me that in sales, specifically in sales, listening pays huge dividends in landing greater sales, getting bigger commissions, getting promotions, being a better team. I mean, it just goes across. It's like the common denominator. Before you get educated in any sales strategy, any sales methodology, any sales process, best to get formally educated in listening.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. It's a cornerstone, absolute cornerstone. And yet, as you point out, 5% of adults, and most people in sales, although I've met some salespeople at a very young age that would, talk you into doing almost anything that they wanted you to do. But,
sure.
In the professional world, we are adults and we are in sales, and only 5% of us have that education. So could you take us on a journey of maybe, would it be best to look at first what the poorest habits are related to listening, and then how to get better in each one? What would you think would be the best way to approach this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think looking at the listening pays framework, if you are, we'll start with 6 very simple strategies.
Good.
And the 6 strategies are things that many people are doing really well. The key is that top-of-mind awareness, doing them consistently well every day. The first one is build a solid foundation. And the solid foundation is converting the word listen to SEER, S-I-E-R, and there's an asterisk on the end of it. And SEER is an acronym which basically takes listening and puts it into a sequence of things that are done very quickly, like in a nanosecond, that can help us to be able to take information in and then also appropriately respond. So the S is sense the message. We use all of the senses that we have. We hear it, we see it, we taste, we touch, we smell. Not just hearing. And once we've done that and we've started to take in the message, we have earned the right to interpret, that's the I, or understand what the message is. We ask questions, and certainly sales professionals do this on a daily basis. They ask those very critical questions. Comprehending is what the interpreting is. What is this message meaning to me. Then you've earned the right to go to the E, which is evaluate or make judgments about what it is you're understanding. Is this the fact? Is it an opinion? Where's the evidence? How credible is it? Ultimately, we come to the R, which is respond. What we say or what we do with this message. The asterisk on the end is memory. In other words, moving things from short-term to long-term memory. And so these 5 components, all connected together, really strengthen what listening is all about. So it's SEER with the asterisk, and that's building a solid foundation.
Okay. Wow. What's interesting, first of all, I believe when we have an acronym attached to action that we need to take, it's so much easier to not only remember it, but to actually do it. So I love this. And I love the first part of this. The S is sense the message, using all of our God-given senses that we have at our disposal. Hear it, see it, taste it, smell it. I mean, that makes us very present in the moment of listening to the message, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when we say that, sense the message, where does emotion come into that? Do we sense also the emotion of the message?
Yeah, that's the vibration, if you will, that's being sent off by another person, or just the tenor of what's going on around us. And we can pick that up not only with our ears, but with our eyes as well. And as we process through the SEER sequence, the key, though, is to go in sequence and interpret before we evaluate. Too many times people begin to take in an emotion, fly by the I, go to the E, and they wind up reacting rather than responding.
Oh, right. So once we think, we got this, we want to accelerate through the acronym, and we miss some critical element of the message.
Exactly.
What would be? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that leads us to one of the other strategies of listening pays, which is lead your emotions rather than have your emotions lead you.
Oh, I love that. Lead your emotions. That right there, if we just stop right here and had some kind of lightning bolt disconnect us and drop every internet connection in the 11 countries we're broadcasting out to, if we just remember to lead our emotions, I mean, that's huge in life in general, whether it's road rage, whether it's opening the door for someone as they're approaching, and whatever that is. I mean, it seems to me leading our emotions is really reaching mastery in just behavior.
Absolutely. It puts us in a whole different mindset.
Yeah.
But we also recognize that there's a skill set behind this, and not just knowing about it, but actually doing it. And that's where the real challenge comes in. I used to talk about moving from being a good listener to a great listener, like from the book Good to Great.
Yeah.
But I'm now at a point where I wish I really could be a great listener on a consistent basis. Today, I'm striving to be a better listener today than I was yesterday, a better listener tomorrow than I am today. So it's this incremental, just step-by-step process with intentionality that's going to enable me to continue to expand my listening capacity.
Precious, absolutely precious. Let me ask you this, Rick. Is there a visual that goes along with the SEER acronym? Is it a funnel? Is it a net? I mean, is there some type of visual that I could also use to get in that moment of using the SEER acronym when I'm knowing that I want to get to be a better listener?
Actually, I use an hourglass.
Oh.
And the SEER is superimposed over the hourglass to reflect the dimensions of time. And so we've got, of course, at the top of the hourglass, you've got future. The sand's in the top. It goes through the slot, which is the now, the present, the moment, and drops into the bottom or the past. If I'm mindful of SEER taking place in all three time dimensions, not only am I in the real moment, real time, as I am with you right now, I can also go back into the past, and if a person says to me, hey, you weren't listening, well, that's just too broad for me. I want to know what level of SEER did I miss, so that I can, again, make any kind of adjustments the next time around. Maybe I was, too quick to interpret, went to the E too quick.
So,
and in the future, in the top, I can plan to, prepare to.
So, I love this hourglass. What made me ask the question is I drew alongside of the SEER as I went down the page with the SIER and then the memory and remembering and that kind of stuff. I drew a funnel. And I looked at it and I go, well, that doesn't seem right. And so I love this hourglass visual, and I love the way you're saying at the top is the future, at the little where the sand actually comes through to go to the bottom chamber is the now, and then in the bottom is the past because it has gone to the bottom chamber. And so if I get into a situation where someone says, well, gee, Tony, you just weren't listening, I need to question that and find out from the person or the situation that created that to understand where I actually dropped the ball. And that self-diagnosis, or that not diagnosis, but diagnostic tool will help me be a better listener, as you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. I'll give you an example to illustrate that.
Yeah.
I mentioned to you I almost lost my job.
Yep.
Well, the backstory is I had developed an organization from an idea at a college, and over a 10 or 12 year period, it grew like crazy. We had a team of 14 folks that were doing some really amazing things. I got a new boss. The new boss, this was his first real leadership appointment. He came from a faculty position, didn't really know much about the organization that I was leading, and he was very inquisitive. And not only was he inquisitive, but he would offer up suggestions and recommendations. Well, this is an organization that was my baby.
Sure.
I had raised this, and here's this guy coming in. Have you tried this? Have you thought about this? Well, it seemed like it was an endless litany of been there, done that, tried that, been there, done that, tried that.
Yeah.
I was missing, the critical eye in SEER.
Yep. That interpret, understand the message, ask questions, get clarity.
Exactly. I was so overconfident that I knew what I was doing that I went SE.
Yep. And so that's really I bet that's is that more common in men than women? Because our ego, that sounds like an ego kind of thing. I'm beating my chest. Hey, I know this better than anybody. I built the organization, and here's this new person coming on the block, and what the heck do they know? Do you find that men are not as good listeners as women?
I think that men and women listen differently.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and there is some research to back this up, that women have the ability to be able to take in much, much more in terms of the environment, like a scan of what's going on.
Whereas, so they're good in the sensing the message.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Whereas males are going to lock in on one thing.
Yeah. That is so perfect. And I love the way you reframed my questions. So it's not that they're, but they're just different. They listen differently.
Yes.
And how about as you move through the SEER acronym, are they different? Do they interpret different? Do they evaluate different? Do they respond differently also? Is it kind of prevalent through the whole acronym?
Well, I think that with some education, that level of mindfulness starts to elevate dramatically. In fact, I think that SEER, of all of the concepts, if one could embrace SEER and not just know it, but do it, and do it so regularly that they become it, interesting things happen. I have not seen research, to your question, that takes SEER from a male-female perspective and says which ones are doing which steps more effectively.
Yes. And as I look at what I have, and already I'm up to 4 pages of notes, as I love taking notes and I love referring back to stuff. It keeps me learning as I listen. So when I'm looking at the SEER acronym here, Rick, I bet if in the moment when I'm in a situation, I can see where I jumped over the interpret and I started to evaluate without understanding. I can see in a conversation where I jumped right from sense the message all the way to respond to the message. So it becomes a very effective diagnostic tool being in that center part of the hourglass where I'm in the now and experiencing a conversation.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's
in
huge.
Fact, the acronym itself can also be reshaped to identify SEER, success in each relationship, or a sale in each relationship.
Yes. An interesting idea, Club Beto members. What if we took Rick's advice and had the SEER acronym present on our note-taking page or on our CRM system, where we're looking at this acronym and making sure we're going through the steps of sensing, interpreting, evaluating, and responding in the interactions we have. I mean, isn't that the best way to learn, really, to do the visual? You look at it and you're watching yourself progress through it. Then after a while, you probably wouldn't have to look at it when you've got the muscle built up in each one of these areas.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, so, Rick, in your book, and I'm going to strongly suggest that each Club Beto member invest in Listening Pays, the book written by Rick, because it lays out, and it's a very interesting and engaging book to read. It's got a nice storyline to it. You did a masterful job writing it. And so, your Club Beto members, you're going to hear me I almost said require. Wow. Wow. I'm going to invite the Club Beto members to get the book Listening Pays. Now, Rick, can we take a short break here? And can you stay with us a little bit longer?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Club Beto members, we're going to take a short break. I'm going to wet my whistle here, and I want you to think about how listening pays in your sales career.
Don't go away. Tony will be right back. This is Club Beto.
What we believe, we become. This is a universal law. Unique to the human potential is that we can literally control our circumstances and outcomes based on our thinking. Though this is not a comfortable thought at times to come to terms with, every success and every failure we have experienced in life has a direct correlation with the thoughts and beliefs we have about ourselves, about other people, and the circumstances we face. The key is this: embrace the belief that you are responsible. That is, response-able. You have the mental, emotional, and physical attributes to respond rather than react to literally every situation that comes your way. If someone hurts you, you're able to respond in a way that creates antagonism or cooperation. If you run out of money, lose your job, get fired, you can choose your response to be regretful, resentful, and disagreeable, or you can choose to be proactive, positive, and optimistic about what life will deal you next. If you believe you're responsible, you immediately have control over what happens next. Your choice, win or lose. Whatever you believe, you will see. This is Vito Selling Head Coach Steve Daly. We coach, you win.
You're listening to Club Vito with Tony Parinello. Today, it's time to talk to Vito.
Actually, it's time to listen to Vito. My very special guest, Rick Bommelje. Let me read this. This is so truthful from Rick's bio. This is word for word, pretty close. The appeal and effectiveness of Rick's programs are found in his practical and real-world approach to education and development. His informal delivery style focuses on practical and, I added the words, easy to understand content that offers participants immediate and measurable benefits. Club Vito members, we have a guest on each and every month on the last Wednesday of the month, which is today, the 28th of January. Rick is our very first guest in this new year of 2015. Now, we, meaning Mickey Davis, our proud producer, made sure that and Rick, of course, making himself available, the importance of the timing of learning from Rick Bommelje is very intentional. And here's why. Imagine in this year 2015, if you added to your list of goals that you are going to overaccomplish, becoming a better listener. This program is your first step, and I'm going to really invite you. And you're going to hear me say this in the archives. You'll hear it. You'll see it come up on our Club Vito membership area. To invest in yourself and get Rick Bommelje's book, his most recent book, Listening Pays. And we're going to have a direct link from this archive right to, and Rick, where would you like for people to buy the book? Amazon, Barnes & Noble, where do you want it to go?
Yeah, thank you, Tony. It's actually available on Amazon in three forms. And it's, of course, softback, it's via Kindle, and an audio format as well.
Perfect. Now, we're going to have a direct link to go right then. It's Club Vito members. It's your choice which version to buy, softback, Kindle, or audio. But I don't really think there's a choice in whether to do it or not. I think it has to be an intentional move on your part to get to be a better listener. And so that's pretty much going to be the homework assignment. So, Rick, going back to the SEER acronym, and would you comment on making judgment, evaluate the E part of the SEER acronym, evaluating and making judgment to the message? What's the best way to do that?
The key in the whole evaluation process is to be able to test what you're taking in, because you've already gone through a due diligence, and the I of interpret is test the message against the evidence that you have available.
Nice.
And then start to probe with follow-up questions in order to deepen your understanding.
Okay, so a good part of listening is asking relevant, clarifying questions so you can evaluate the message.
Exactly. And so the sales professionals do this for a living.
Yeah. Or don't.
Or don't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so in the end, a really effective sales professional is a professional listener.
Yes. And a professional asker of questions.
Absolutely.
So is that going to be your next book? How to ask appropriate and relevant questions?
Well, it's certainly a very critical part of I and E.
Yes.
I from a comprehensive standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
E to test your evidence as to, is this the truth? Is this reliable? Is this factual? Or not?
Yes. So, interestingly enough, you can't probe without listening, right? So you can't ask clarifying questions without listening. So listening actually is the first step with all this.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. Okay, so how do we get better? What would be like a prescription for you to write for someone who sees, I really do need to get better? Where's a good place to start?
Well, I think the first thing is to notice it. Noticing that you want to get better is step number 2. In terms of once you are aware and now you're noticing that you can improve, now it's time to get busy. And so we can start to use some kind of a framework, and I'll just identify some of the other strategies within the Listening Pays framework, in addition to building this solid foundation through SEER, and as we mentioned earlier, lead your emotions. There's the strategy of developing habits, positive, healthy listening habits. We then go to taking 100% responsibility, nothing less. In other words, if you are operating from the position that it's my job when I'm listening to take 100% responsibility, nothing less, as I'm taking in messages, you're going to be in a very productive mindset. Ditch the distractions would be another strategy, and not just the technological devices, but all of the thoughts and things that can be very distracting to us. We need to get rid of those. And then the final strategy would be take meaningful action. Not just any kind of action, but action that creates value.
Rick, you have really thought this out. This is so helpful to have a clear understanding. With every question you answer, there's a definite step that we could take to up our game and to be better. I love, first of all, the ditch the distractions. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, and well, I guess everybody can have these stories where, you're sitting with someone and they're kind of looking up at the ceiling tiles or they're fidgeting with something. It's obvious that they're distracted either by internal messages or external stimuli. And so ditching the distractions, that's huge, absolutely huge. If all we do today, Club Beto members, is when we're with someone, ditch the distractions and give them our full, undivided attention, I mean, that would go a long way to building rapport.
You would separate yourself from the pack.
Yeah, no question. And what's great about this, and we talk about this all the time, the competition, how my product, service, or solution stacks up with the needs and the feeds and the blah, 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 blah. We salespeople individually and authentically are the best competitive advantage, to your point that you just made right now. You will set yourself so far above and ahead of anyone else when you ditch the distractions when you're listening.
It really connects to the point of multitasking.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been so much research done that confirms that multitasking is a myth. We can't do it. When it's done, there's a drop in productivity. There's an increase in stress level. Yet, from a biological standpoint, humans can't take in more than one thought at a time. But we try to. In fact, some organizations, when they're putting employment advertisements out into cyberspace, you'll see must be an excellent multitasker.
Which is impossible to do.
Right. So we're recruiting people to come in and produce less and have increased stress.
That is crazy making. You know, this is, I'm trying to remember, maybe it was KPBS or something. They were talking about the way our brain is wired, to your point, Rick, very, very much so, to edify your point. It was like, it's impossible. Your brain can't do it, to multitask. It creates stress and confusion and errors and sometimes life-threatening situations.
Yes. And the whole idea of this multitasking is a term that of course comes from the tech world, and a single processing computer does not multitask.
That is exactly correct. Yep.
Right? They task switch.
Yep. That's right. They're doing stuff so fast it looks like it's multi, but it's not. It can only do one thing at a time. Yeah.
So if we could just model the computer,
yeah,
we may have it.
We may have it. So, and I also love the taking full responsibility for the outcome and for being a good listener. Not like, oh, this person's an idiot, or I've heard this before, or now they're going to say this. All those kind of distracting, negative kind of takes on a message is giving up responsibility and putting blame somewhere else. So we are fully responsible to be present and listening at the highest possible level. Yes,
and that links directly to the 5 purposes of communication.
Ooh.
When people communicate with one another, there are 5 and only 5 reasons why they're communicating. First is to inform. They're communicating to be able to give somebody something else. Another is to socialize, small talk, news, weather, sports. Another would be entertain, communicate to entertain. I'm going to tell a joke, a story, something like that hopefully someone else will find entertaining. Then we have the purpose of persuasion, to get someone to act or change on something that we had to say. And then the 5th one is emotion, both being able to vent as well as to be able to express emotion. The key, though, is knowing when a message comes your way, what's the purpose of this message?
Yeah, of course.
Which of these 5 is being sent to me right now?
And there could be combinations, right, of the 5.
Yes. And so from a sales standpoint, since persuasion obviously is such a critical part of the sales process, that's why the social communication becomes a very important bridge builder to be able to have that rapport, we call it.
And so as the purpose of informing. So interestingly enough, when I look at this list, and here again you've broken this down into very easy to understand terms and taking it bite-sized. When I look at this list, Rick, should I say, well, inform, persuade, inform and persuade seems to me very much where the purpose to communicate would sit with sales.
Absolutely. And I would move this to one additional level of illustration. We've taken the 5 purposes and put them into a castle, if you will. And in the castle, of course, the castle has a moat around it. Outside of the castle are 2 purposes of communication: inform and entertain. The gatekeeper is the social communication. That's where the person goes over the bridge and is now at the front entrance to the castle. Inside the castle is persuasive communication as well as emotional communication. So the bottom line is this, that if we want to be invited inside the castle, we must engage the guard. And that's done through learning about the guard. And so from a sales standpoint, that's about knowing your client backwards and forwards and being able to communicate effectively in the social level so that they find enough value to permit you to go inside of their castle to offer up whatever product or service or whatever it is that you feel can add value to their life.
And that's the persuasion part. Sure, that here again, that makes a lot of sense. I drew a big circle. That's the moat. Inside the castle, I got a little gate. And so your point, the social part of this, now, we're not talking about being a socialite. We're talking about being sociable, being approachable, and knowing how to approach. And same with the inform and entertain. We're not talking about being a stand-up comedian here. We're talking about informing the person through an easy-to-understand and enjoyable. When I look at the word entertain, I see enjoyable. And so we need to become sociable from a standpoint of understanding the prospect, to your point, so we can inform and gain access inside the castle where the decision maker sits, so we can persuade and figure out if what we have makes sense for them.
That's right. Some people try to storm the castle.
Yes, ill-equipped with understanding the prospect, the needs of the industry, the benefits they have to offer, only to find that they get thrown into the moat with the alligators.
There you go.
I love it. I absolutely. The visual of this, here again, if we could, this relates to selling to Vito so nicely. And, Vito, of course, is the very important top officer, the person with the ultimate veto power sitting inside their castle. And if we want to get inside the castle, we better really understand that first and foremost, we're sitting on the outside. And to get in, we've got to understand the industry, understand the client, understand our product, service, and solution, and how it relates to this person and the benefits they're looking for, and how to inform them in a very sociable way.
That's a great connection.
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a bunch of sense. So from a homework standpoint, what we do with the Club Beto members, and as I interview other luminaries and best-selling authors and content experts like yourself, well, actually, in all the years I've been doing this, and I've been doing it a number of years, you come to the table with you are a content-rich presenter. So many people will talk around a subject and do a lot of theory with very little practical how-to, which doesn't really serve the audience's needs, because the need is to get some nugget of information that I can take action on, which you have been doing for the last 43 minutes with us. So for a homework, to wrap this up, Rick, for a homework standpoint, what would you suggest the Club Beto member do?
Yeah, that's another great question, because it takes it beyond the content to the execution.
Yeah.
And I would suggest we spent time focusing on SEER.
Okay.
I would invite Club Beto members to learn SEER, and I think they have enough now to be able to go through the process. There is also, I'd offer this to them too, there's a free app, Listening Pays, that has all of the information on it. And so they could download it on their Android or iPhone or whatever and go to the SEER section and start to know it and then put it into action.
Perfect.
There's a little check sheet that you can use at the end of every day that asks you some questions about what have you done through each of the steps of SEER. And so you can actually create a little metric from day to day to day to day to measure yourself, to see if you're being true to SEER. And that would be a tangible step. That's what I do with my folks that I'm working with, either in groups or one-on-one. I know about a year ago, I had the privilege of working with an executive chef, and he had a really large team in this major hotel, and he was intrigued with SEER, and I thought, that's a word that comes from your field, isn't it? I asked him, SEER?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, yeah. I said, well, what's the definition of SEER in your world? Mm-hmm. He says, to lock in the juices.
Yeah. I
said, exactly.
Exactly. Wow.
That's what it's about, to lock in the juices.
You know, so this is kind of interesting, Club Beto members, if you stop and think about how Rick connected his acronym to something that the person he was working with fully understood. I mean, I shouldn't say need. I invite you all to look for those connections of commonality, because it seems to me when we connect up with people in some common way that perhaps is outside of what we're wanting to sell them or within, it doesn't matter, but connecting up in a common way shows that we are like someone and we understand them. And that's really an important part of building effective rapport and making a sale is this connection of commonality. So people get it. They see it. It's an aha moment for them. That's classic. Absolutely classic. So the free app, the check sheet at the end of each day to see how we've done is a bit of homework for the Club Beto members to start doing immediately.
Yeah, I call it a daily listening scorecard.
I love it. I love it. So you come out of the day understanding how you did and areas that we can get better the next day.
Yeah, for example, in the area of sensing, how many times today did you stop making eye contact with a speaker?
Wow.
In the area of interpreting, how many times did your mind wander while someone else was speaking? In the area of evaluate, how many times did my personal judgments crowd out the speaker's message? In the responding side, how many times did I interrupt someone or change the subject in the middle of the conversation? And in the memory piece, how many times did I forget some information, crucial piece of information that would have made the difference between, in that moment, making a solid connection or creating a cost because I lost it?
Yeah, like the person's name.
Exactly.
Oh, boy. You know, as you went down the list of how many times did I do that, I'm thinking, man, I am guilty of each one of those. So I don't believe we'd have to go very far for very long to find areas of that need immediate attention that we can get better, become better at listening each and every day and remembering what we're learning each and every day. You know, so learn from our mistakes and move forward in an attempt and not to make those mistakes again. Each one of the areas you just pointed out are very common mistakes I believe we all make.
Sure.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Rick, here again, you have set a whole new bar to deliver content-rich, actionable items, moving from knowing to doing. Have a great rest of the day, and thanks again, Rick.
You've been listening to Club Beto with Tony Parinello.
Stay in touch with us 24 hours a day at vitoselling.com or call us with comments and suggestions. This program and its entire contents are the property of Anthony Parinello. Unauthorized duplication or rebroadcast without express written permission of Anthony Parinello is prohibited and unlawful under U.S. copyright law.